Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a new episode on our podcast, EL Talk. Hi, Shirley. How are you doing?
Hello, Martin. I'm great. Today we have a very special episode. We are going to talk about the ongoing professional development for English teachers. So we have a very special guest today in the episode.
Yes, our special guests are Denise Lowery, Regional English Language Officer from the U.S. Embassy, and Ralph Grayson, English Programs Manager from the British Council. Hi, Denise.
Yes.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Hello, Ralph.
Hello.
Thank you very much for being here. So let's start with our first question. Denise, what does RELO do? And can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Sure. So RELO stands for Regional English Language Office, and we are a part of the United States Department of State, and we oversee U.S. Embassy English language programs throughout the region. The RELO Andes or RELO Lima covers 7 countries in the Southern Cone and Andes region, and we consult with and advise governments, ministries of education, universities, binational centers, teaching associations on English language programs and policies. We also provide resources and professional development opportunities to English language teachers. We organize conferences and workshops, and we produce materials for the teaching and learning of English.
That's a lot. And you have a very small team, right? You're
Yes,
not that
we
many
do.
people.
So it's not just me, it's also Karina Garcia and Marcela Raffo, who are locally employed staff in the RELO office. And I like to call them the hands and the feet of the RELO office, because nothing would happen without their hard work.
Great. And Ralph, what about the British Council? Can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Sure. The British Council is an organization, a UK organization that basically works on cultural relations and the arts. We call it cultural engagement, right? And we work in mainly 3 areas, which are English, education, and arts. And we are like an arm's length of the British Embassy. We are not part of the British Embassy, although very soon we will be working door to door. But no, we are an organization that was originated as a charity in the UK. But we work very close with the embassy. They look at the consular aspect of the UK in Peru, and we look, as I said, we look at the cultural program, at the cultural engagement program.
Great, thank you. As Denise mentioned, right, we have different projects. We, as English teachers, we know that we have to nourish ourselves, right, in order to improve our teaching practice. And that, related to that, Ralph, what do you think English teachers need to develop professionally?
That's a very interesting question. I've been thinking about this a lot since I joined the British Council, because when I joined the organization back in 2015, my main priority was precisely to start working on teacher development in the public sector. I had done the same job, of course, in the private sector before I joined the British Council. And I found out something very interesting about working for the British Council, which was what we call the teacher development framework, all right? And this has been developed, of course, this framework has been developed based on research that the British Council has carried out throughout many, many years, right? So we got to the point in which we said, precisely that question. What is it that teachers need in order to develop professionally? And we established several things, okay? I'm going to just briefly mention them. But I think it all starts with the 3 obvious aspects, right? Which are language proficiency. A teacher needs to be proficient. It's very challenging when teachers are not proficient in English, at least to a B1 level of the Council of Europe reference framework, because when they are not at that level, it's very difficult for teachers to access professional development opportunities. So in our case, the British Council, all our professional development program is designed for teachers who are B1 and above. So the first thing is language proficiency. We know that most teachers are B1, some of them are B2, C1, C2s, etc. The second thing that's necessary, of course, is an education, a general education qualification. And in Peru, we have teachers of all sorts. We have teachers who only have a secondary school degree and then go into teaching. We have teachers who have reached bachelor's degree, others who have master's degree, and some others that have PhDs, who knows, right? But an educational qualification, a general one, I think it's very important. It can be a background in, I don't know, in arts, in literature, they can be BAs in translation, whatever gave them like an general post-school degree, let's say, post-secondary degree. And then ideally, they should also have the third component, which is a specific English language teaching qualification. It can be an initial teacher training certificate. It can be a diploma in English language, like, for example, a TESOL diploma or a CELTA. It can be, or a DELTA. It can be a bachelor's degree again, like a second career in English language teaching. It can be a master's degree in education with a focus in English language teaching, a PhD again, etc. I think those three elements are the foundation here. And then as the teachers transit this career path, this educational path, at the same time, we know that teachers are really concerned about professional development. And if you look at the framework I was telling you that the British Council has developed, we have defined 12 specific, let's say, strategies that teachers need to develop as they acquire more and more experience. And there are, of course, training, development activities that can strengthen those 12 areas. I can tell you about those 12 areas, but of course it will be a lot. But maybe we can discuss them as we go along, right?
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's that's a great experience for teachers, because in a way, the components that you mentioned, and besides that, we have even more help them in a way to gain experience also in the teaching section. But beside that, through life, and the teacher never stops learning. So that's really... Yes, that's really interesting. And related with that, the teachers have, as you mentioned, projects that the British Council give them in order to improve their learning styles or their teaching experience as well.
Exactly. The British Council provides professional development opportunities in those 12 areas. Just to mention a few, for example, one of the key development areas in the teacher is, of course, planning lessons and courses, right? That's one of the key elements. The teacher needs to know how to plan their lessons and courses. And of course, this can be from an initial teacher training level to, let's say, an expert level. The same happens with other development areas, like, for example, understanding learners, that ability to understand students and how they learn. Obvious things like managing the lesson, knowing the subject, knowing about English language culture, Another key aspect is, of course, managing resources, not only technical resources, but also resources in the physical classroom. Teacher needs to manage assessments, needs to manage, as I said, technology. They have to, as you mentioned, take responsibility for their own professional development. And there are other additional aspects, like, for example, using inclusive practices. The teacher needs to know how to bring students together in the classroom as much as possible, lowering any barriers that stop students from benefiting from education. We also know, for example, in contexts like in Peru, using multilingual approaches is very important. So that's something else that we develop in our CPD program. Soft skills as well. Teacher needs to have, needs to develop progressively soft skills. Like working in collaboration, working as a team, etc. And finally, one of the last things that's in our framework is understanding educational policies and practice. Because each teacher works in a specific context. Like, for example, in the public sector, teachers really need to understand all these policies provided by the Ministry of Education. If they work in the private sector, they need to understand organizational policies and manage them and adapt them to what they can do in the classroom.
Yes, as you mentioned, those are really powerful tools, and as well as the British Council can give a teacher, no? So that's really wonderful. Yes, Martin.
So I wanted to ask the same question to Denise. What do you think teachers need to develop professionally?
Well, I think that Ralph covered a really broad range of things that they need. I would simply add or maybe summarize in saying that what we call 21st century skills, which some of these I think were skills that we needed to have before the 21st century, but that it includes things like critical thinking skills, creativity, information literacy, technological literacy, leadership, social skills, and I would say emotional intelligence as well. And I think one of the things that sort of took us all by surprise was the pandemic that basically I think sort of added a few skills on there that we need to have as well, and that is connecting with our students in a way that we weren't accustomed to before, because now we've seen, especially in Peru, that it's, we're back to face-to-face classes now, but we weren't for a very long time. And I think teachers had to sort of develop on their own a lot of these skills that now, in our programming, for example, that we're trying to include as well, because we don't know what the next challenges are going to be. But I do think that those are all skills that we need to sort of also identify that should be a part of any professional development plan for all teachers, but especially for English language teachers as well.
Yes, definitely. And I'm really glad that you brought up the 21st century skills that we need to learn, because I've read about them, and they actually make a lot of sense if we're talking about teaching. And another question that I wanted to ask you, Denise, is what are some of the achievements and challenges that we face in Peru regarding teacher development?
Yeah, let's look at maybe the challenges first. I think that Peru is a demographically and geographically diverse country. You have just about every geographical setting there is. You have some people, it's not that not everyone is a native Spanish speaker. There are a lot of indigenous languages that are first languages, and then Spanish is a second language. And then, of course, English would be, a third or a fourth language for many of those. So, I do see this as a challenge, but the achievements, and again, I'll bring up the pandemic. What we saw was the rapid way in which the Ministry of Education and other learning institutions or educational institutions quickly adapted to what was, the new normal. And we got to see that firsthand. And I think Ralph and I both were fortunate enough to be able to partner with Manedu and with some other institutions who provided their teachers with these rapid resources. I was amazed, and of course, I think, every country in the world went through this. But I did see that there was in Peru, and perhaps maybe it's not special to Peru, but I think Peru did it especially well. There was a real sense of community among, the educational institutions and the educational community that I think that helped the teachers of Peru to adapt more quickly. So I do think that's an achievement. We worked together. I think those of us who were, trying to meet the challenges, and I think we worked very well together to address, the needs of not only the teachers but the students here in Peru. So, again, I think that was just amazing. The way you all and we all came together in those times, and I would definitely call that an achievement, a good example of an achievement here.
Yeah, that's right. And I think every student and teacher was really lucky to have both the British Council and RELO helping them with these resources. And I'm glad that they're there, because the resources also helped the teachers understand the way we could use English to also teach, about what's going on in the world, or teach them about diversity and other subjects. So yeah, that was I think a really important achievement. What about you, Ralph? What do you think about the achievements and challenges that Peru face regarding teacher development?
Well, I think that I'm going to do the same thing that Denise did, which is talking about first the challenges, right? I think that Peruvian teachers are just amazing. How they work and they face the challenges of everyday work. Not only what Denise mentioned about the geographical challenges. I mean, accessing their schools as simple as something as simple as that, or to something more complex like accessing technology and resources. I think that in parallel to that, I think one of the achievements has been the teachers have developed resilience. Peruvian teachers are really, really resilient. They don't simply give up to whatever challenge is in front of them. And I agree with the multilingualism, issue in Peru. That's a big issue in areas where Spanish is not the first language, for example. And teachers get all the information and they get all the resources in English, sometimes in Spanish, and they need to make the necessary adaptations for their classrooms. They need to localize that content for their classrooms. And Denise mentioned something very important that I'm going to take it as an achievement, is that sense of community, which I find specific to English language teachers. I think that English language teachers in Peru are of a different nature. And they know it, they feel special. They are like a special group in the education landscape, and they quickly develop those bonds and they create their own communities of practice, their own networks. They are always eager to share their knowledge, to share what they've done in continuous professional development events, for example, and that's quite an achievement in Peru. If you ask me from the British Council side, for instance, what's the biggest achievement I've seen reflected in what we do, is that precisely that sense of community brings about some interesting engagement, like a wish to be permanently engaged with their professional development. And I have numbers, I have figures that are a testimony to that. If you compare, for example, the participation of Peruvian English teachers across different international professional development events, you will always notice that Peruvian teachers outshine other countries that may have bigger number of teachers. You know, they have more teachers, but Peru is always at the top with teachers participating in those events, and that's important in terms of their wish to be always updated, as you mentioned. I think that's quite a unique challenge in Peru. A unique achievement in Peru.
Could I one of the things that Ralph said really resonated with me, and that was about the resilience of the teachers, English teachers in Peru, and then also how he was talking about their hunger for professional development opportunities. And that was something that has amazed me as well, that every program that we've continued to do now virtually, we have an overwhelming number of people who want to participate. And we're sort of, waiting for the burnout, but it's not coming. And I'm just amazed at that because, I'm sort of burnt out. And I think, teachers are going and dealing with all of these new experiences. And yet they still, after work, will come and do, a 6, 8, 10-week workshop and participate fully in that. So that resonated with me when you mentioned those two things.
Yes, great. As you mentioned, right, some teachers, maybe they have, of course, a motivation because now the transition between the face-to-face classes, we still have our online classes, but sometimes teachers find difficult, not maybe to find webinars, or it's not really accessible for them to take part in those programs, as we have here in the case of RELO and the British Council as well. In that case, what do you think, Ralph, that international cooperation can help our English teachers to develop that professionally?
Yep, I think that one of the things that we do as a pillar in our work at the British Council is working and designing programs based on research. So I think it is very important that teachers contribute to research, voicing out what they think, voicing out their challenges. So that feeds our activity, that feeds the programs that we design. So for example, in countries that have, for instance, low connectivity, like in this, which is very common in this part of the world, we need to listen to what teachers say in terms of their accessibility, in terms of their students' accessibility, and try and lower those barriers when we design our programs. So rather than designing programs that are specific to certain technologies, like for example, synchronous activities like a video conference or a webinar, an online webinar, we can find alternative means to deliver that continuous professional development activity. At the British Council, for example, we have had very successful cases that we are now using in the rest of the region. Like, for example, our colleagues in Cuba, our colleagues in Venezuela, who deal with a different set of challenges. They, for example, have been very innovative in trying new technologies that are allowed in their countries, right? Because in several of the mechanisms we use for other countries do not work for those countries. So they adapt the professional development activities to platforms like Telegram or like WhatsApp, and they do it at that level with the teachers. It's not only that teachers work with those technology, but it comes from organizations like the British Council, who which have to adapt, of course, the program to that particular context. So that's something that international organizations, I think, we can do. Right, that's the added value that we bring, that we work with an international perspective, and we can gather those international experiences and gather the best of each of them to use them in contexts where we are, like, for example, in our case, in Peru, right? That's a wonder of working for an international organization.
Yeah, that's great. And as you mentioned, not only here in Lima, we have from different parts of our country. So that's really a grateful experience for our teachers. What about, Denise, in that case of RELO, right? We know that teachers, maybe they can have workshops, webinars, so they are constantly learning. What about that cooperation that maybe our English teachers can have now in order to grow as development professionals?
So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned international cooperation. I think that, as Ralph was saying, I mean, I think it provides teachers or educators with fresh ideas from other parts of the region and the world. I think even though we're all very different, some of our problems or some of our issues are very much the same. And so it provides educators with fresh ideas. I think it provides them with opportunities to interact in the global community, which is extremely important. Again, that is the future. Is that we are becoming a much smaller world. So it's important that we do take advantage of international opportunities. And I would also say that specifically international opportunities with the English-speaking world provides English language educators the opportunity to learn more about the places where English is spoken and about the people and culture in the places where English is spoken, which I think is so important for them in the classroom in order to, because I don't think that we're merely teaching English language. We are teaching about, the people and the culture of that particular country or area of the world. So I think that, in international opportunities for the English language teacher specifically is very important.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention something else because I know that both the British Council and RELO have also helped doing some research, right? I remember that the British Council, I think you published a research on teaching English and for very, very small kids, like for very young learners. And I also remember that RELO was helping the Ministry of Education researching a little bit about what the teachers thought about the materials from Aprendo en Casa. So what do you think about research? Do you think that is a way that international cooperation can help English teachers develop?
Absolutely. I think that basically, and one thing that I do like about the British Council is that they do a lot of research, because I think that all our decisions on, how to move forward in education should be research-based. So I absolutely think that that's, it's imperative to have, good research-based plans.
Yeah, likewise. I think, well, thank you for that, Denise. I think that, our research-based approach is also a pillar in the work we do, and that's the way we support governments in different countries, because each government, each Ministry of Education or Secretariat of Education, they have their own gaps of information, and that's where organizations like British Council and RELO can fit in, because we listen to our stakeholders, we listen to our customers, and we know what we can find out what those gaps are. We can sense that, and then we can take that idea to our boards, to our region, and say, hey, what about this? Has it been done? For example, has this kind of research been done in other countries? And most likely our colleagues say, yes, this has been tried here and there. Again, that's a wonder of working for an international organization in 110 countries. Somebody in the network has done that work before, and it's very easy to transfer the same initiative, adapt it, craft it, of course, to the local context, and say, okay, in such country, this piece of research was carried out. What about doing the same thing here in Peru? And that's, for example, what you mentioned, Martin, the piece of research that was based on English language teaching to preschool students. That same piece of research had been carried out at secondary level. It was called English in Peru, and looking at the policies and all this. And that, for example, was the foundation for this other piece of research to look specifically at early years teaching in Peru. And of course, the decision was, there were a number of suggestions and conclusions, but that helped the Ministry of Education, for example, decide when will be the right time, the right moment to initiate a program at that level, in English language program at that level. Probably it's not now, but they already have that research foundation to make decisions. I think that's important. That's an important element.
Yes. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Denise, very much for all the information you gave us. We are pretty sure our teachers that are listening this episode are going to be really grateful and, of course, expecting now they can access or wait up about the information that as RELO as a British Council can give them. And thank you, EL Talk community, for listening to us. Stay tuned for a new episode of EL Talk.
EL Talk, Teachers Talk.
Las opiniones vertidas en este podcast son de exclusiva responsabilidad de quienes la emiten.